In the last 8 years now that I've been working at TED, there is one question that I have asked, and I have been asked more than any other. Where are the women speakers? So I asked this before I joined the team, looking at the program. I have been asked it about some programs I've worked on myself. And lately, I've been asking it as I watch the TEDx talks that come to me for consideration on TED.com. So only around 20% of these shortlisted talks are by women, and that's really affecting the ratio on TED.com. So I start asking myself, what can we do about this? Why do we have the shortfall? And it's interesting because before I joined the team, I actually thought that this question was just one of curatorial focus, that if we focused on finding women, they would fill the program. But what I've learned since then is that it's actually a much more complicated question than that. So as it turns out, women are, when it comes to inviting speakers, women are harder to find. They are more likely to say no, and they're slightly more likely to cancel. So for example, I was curating a salon a year ago. I invited 7 men and 7 women, and 5 men said yes, and 5 women said no. And that is probably not, it's not entirely unusual, and probably kind of familiar to some of you. And I've actually come to believe over the years that the reason we see so many fewer women speakers is largely because individual women make these consistent personal decisions to decline public speaking. And so, but why? Why do they turn us down? I want to share with you what I hear from them. So the first thing I hear is, I'm not ready. Sometimes women turn us down. Sometimes it's strategic because they don't think that they're ready to unveil something quite yet. But often they turn us down because they genuinely don't feel that they are prepared enough or experienced enough to talk on the TED stage. And to be honest, I've actually never had a man turn me down for those reasons. Family. So women are often the primary caregiver for their family, and those responsibilities have to come first. But interestingly, I've actually been turned down by as many men as women for family reasons. I actually don't think that this is the biggest differentiator when it comes to the men-women divide. But the work, our relationship with work actually affects it a lot. So one of the things I hear all the time is the women we approach are often managers of large teams, and they really prioritize that kind of one-on-one leadership with their team. They consider the work in their office with their team their real work, as opposed to sort of being out in the world talking about it. And that's actually how I sort of feel about it as well, that perspective. There's nothing wrong with that perspective, but it has a sort of unintended consequence of us seeming to live in a world with far fewer women leaders than we actually have. So what do we as curators do about that? Well, over the years, we Bruno, Kelly, Chris, and I have kind of evolved a whole set of techniques specifically about finding and recruiting women speakers. And it starts with where you look. So we look harder and we look in different places. So women actually often kind of shirk press coverage as well as public speaking. So you often won't hear about them first. We joke that you kind of have to smoke them out. You have to go looking for them. And sometimes in less obvious places. So women are a little less likely to be the CEO or president of a company, but they often play that role of the strong number 2. Think of like a Sheryl Sandberg. They're often also sort of quietly doing amazing work, leading departments and initiatives inside organizations. So you have to look a little bit deeper. And also, we are never embarrassed to just ask everyone we know, what woman do you think should speak at TED? That's not a sexist question, it's a practical question. Because the fact is there are fewer women out in the world speaking, so they often don't pop to mind as quickly. But when you specifically ask somebody what women should speak, we've gotten amazing contributions that way. And by the way, I just want to back up my statement for a minute of there being fewer women speaking out in the world. In the US, our speaker bureaus are only 20% women. The recommendations that come to us on TED.com are actually only 15% women, even though they're recommended by half men and women. Sometimes we persuade women in different ways. The idea of kind of prestige or self-gratification aren't big movers for a lot of the women, but they do respond often to the idea of the impact they'll have, why it matters to me, to the conference, to their cause, to their organization, to an audience that they care about. And by the way, those tools of persuasion are super useful with men who are reluctant to speak as well. And finally, we're persistent. We're not creepy, but we're persistent. So whenever I'm inviting a woman to speak, I literally go into it prepared not to take no for an answer. And if a woman isn't available one year because of any number of responsibilities, I immediately try to book her for the following year so that we have that year ahead of us to prepare and to work together. Now, through all of this, there's an interesting question for us in the room. It's just, should you set a goal? Should you be thinking about the number of women that you want, the percent of women you want on the stage? And we never want you to think about yourselves as having a quota, because a quota carries with it this implication that you're somehow lowering your standards. And to be clear, we never want you to invite anyone to your TEDx stage that doesn't deserve to be there. But we actually find internally that it's useful to have some kind of a goal because it helps us to prevent us from kind of accidentally creating a lopsided program. So whether you think about a 30% goal, which is good, it's strong, it's a little better than most conferences out there, and it's better than where we are now, or 40%, which is where we are with TEDGlobal this year, and we view that as excellent and a very strong effort, or 50%, which is of course the ultimate goal, but very hard to reach. Wherever you reach for in that spectrum, the thing that I would love to leave you with and to think about is the potential that we have as a community. So in the year ahead, we as a community are going to be putting 15,000 talks out into the world. We as a community will have a material impact on the quality and diversity of ideas that the world sees, and I can't wait to see what you do with that. Thank you.
Thank you, June. So we're going to try another scenario, and this is one to pay attention to because it's kind of important. We're going to go back in time. If I could reset June's presentation to about 3 or 4 slides ago, we're going to fake a tech failure, okay? My policy as a host and as an organizer, never strand your speaker on stage because your speaker's in presentation mode, right? Your speaker's doing this thing. Even a talented speaker is going to have difficulty. Now, it depends on the speaker. Someone as experienced as June, I'd be sitting there, and if her tech went out, I'd probably actually let her handle it because June knows how to handle it. So in this scenario, June, it's 3 minutes ago, and June is an inexperienced speaker, okay? She's going to, and her text is failing, and watch, her clicker's not working.
So be persistent.
And the stage manager says, we got to kill some time. We don't know what's happening. And I'm going to jump right and say, so, you know what, June? It looks like we have a little bit of a technical problem, which is actually a good opportunity because we have that's exactly what it would look like. We have some questions for you. And okay. I would either go out into the audience for questions, but, you know, I actually have a question. So you say 40 and 50%. Is there, why not 60 and just, you know, for a try? Is this something that you would ever try to do?
Well, I think that the goal should be parity, right? So that's what we're really talking about, is not favoring one sex or one group over another, but going for parity. So that's why 50-50 would be the goal. And if you end up on one side of that or the other, then that ends up being acceptable.
So is there anybody that we should watch this time? Is there any stories you can tell about this particular TEDGlobal? You know, is there someone that was a hard get, or are you allowed to say?
You know, Bruno is really the source on that. But I know that there are a lot of women on this program that he's been trying to pull in for years. And that's often what we do. It'll take us 3-4 years sometimes to get women in that we want. And then sometimes they cancel. So he had several cancellations, which throw off the ratio in the end.
Right. So did we have more cancellations from women this year? Can you say? Or?
I think it might have actually ended up equal.
Oh, was it?
I think it ended up equal.
So we've reached cancellation parity?
Cancellation parity. Women are only slightly more likely to cancel.
Right.
They're slightly more likely.
So in this scenario, I'd be just constantly watching the stage manager, and I would just go as long as I needed to. And if I needed to go more, I would open questions to the audience. You can kind of go as long as possible. The important thing is to recalibrate. Probably filming this, I'd have June, you know, so it looks, June, like, looks like we've got your tech fixed. So I'm going to have you stand right where you were. And ladies and gentlemen, she's about to do something very difficult. So I need you to pick up the energy and welcome back to finishing her talk. Give it up again for June Cohen.
Thank you.
Whenever you're ready, June.
Great. This gives me 10 seconds to say something else.
Right. And then she would pick up where she was at. So that's how you handle it. Never strand your speaker. Always jump on stage and don't leave them alone. Thank you very much, June, for your help.
Thank you.